This is Global Study Talks, the podcast of educations.com. Welcome to a new episode of Global Study Talks. Today we're going to talk with Byron Reyes, who went from Guatemala to different places in the world. But I am particularly interested in one country, that is Korea, South Korea. But we will go little by little. There is a lot to talk because he is a specialist in education. He's doing his second master in education system or international education. So, hello, Byron. First of all, hello.
Hi, Martina. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here sharing all this information regarding, what are the implications of studying abroad.
Yes, of course. And that's what we are particularly interested in, right? Like how it is the experience of traveling and living in another country and studying in another country. But in your particular case, I also find it fascinating to talk about educational systems because you experience yourself, first-hand experience, in different places of the world with the focus on that, because that's your topic of study. Let's start in the beginning. So you studied in Guatemala first. And what was that you studied first? And how did you get interested in education in the first place?
Okay, yes. I studied my elementary level, secondary, and high school in Guatemala. My biggest inspiration to become a teacher, and specifically an English teacher, was an English teacher I had in 8th grade, actually. I can recall her name is Floridalma Lopez. She is an exceptional English teacher, and she was the one who really inspired me to become an English teacher. Yes, so thanks to that inspiration, I decided to apply to the university. I wanted to become an English teacher, but what I didn't know is that to become an English teacher, I had to know English already.
Before.
Exactly. It's not that they were going to teach me English as I was studying the major. So I didn't know that. That was a bit discouraging because then I was not ready enough to, study that career at the university. So then I was not able to start studying at the university. So for 1 year, 1.5 years, I had to study English. And then I had to apply again to be admitted in that program. And that's how I finally was admitted in the education program to become an English teacher at the university.
So your main interest was like English or to be a teacher?
Initially to become a teacher, but then when I met this teacher I told you, she just inspired me in the sense of like, why not becoming an English teacher, right? Even I knew since the beginning that I didn't have like the skills, but then I didn't give up. And then I said, okay, if I really want to become an English teacher, why not devoting my whole time to study English and then being admitted at the university to become part of this program. That was in Guatemala.
In Guatemala. So you did that and you started to work as an English teacher before you started your journey abroad, or how was that?
That's a good question, actually. I studied first to become a teacher in Spanish. So I worked for about 6 years, 7 years as a Spanish English teacher in a private school in Guatemala. But at the same time as I was working as a Spanish teacher, I was studying at the university to become an English teacher. So parallel to that, once I graduated from this program, I finally was given the chance in the private school I was working to become a part of the English team. And that's how the adventure started.
But the adventure of going outside of Guatemala, that's the adventure we also are very curious about, started by looking for scholarships, right? Like to try, how was that life at that moment where you were working? You were also thinking, how can I study more or how can I study abroad? Was the intention to go abroad the main thing, or was the topic of what you were studying that took you outside of Guatemala?
Actually, it's a combination of different factors because, as I was a teacher, I read a lot. And that's also thanks to the school I was working because they also motivated the staff to, learn more about education. So I was exposed to, these books that talk about how education was around the world, in the Nordic countries, in Asia. So that really, the same way I was inspired by this teacher in secondary level, I was inspired by these books and these authors who describe vividly, how education was in other countries. So that's how I started to be curious about, it's really interesting to read about education in other countries, but it would be like really a great experience to study abroad, to feel that in first person. So then I didn't have enough resources, economical resources, to cover studies abroad. So I started this journey of trying to find scholarships, and that's how I discovered this organization in Guatemala called Indeswa. Indeswa is this nonprofit organization that provides lots of information on how to have access to scholarships around the world. You don't have to pay for it. They provide you with the information on how to get, all the information required to study abroad. And then that's how I was exposed to all this information. And the first chance I had to study abroad was in South Korea, as you said.
There we go. I am, again, very interested in that part because I think it looks like, I'm also from Latin America, and it looks like a huge change, culturally speaking. And also in the educational system, I'm also curious of how you found that specifically. Of course, we know that everything is different, the food is different, like the cultural behavior is different and everything, and that could be very attractive. But I'm also very interested in knowing how it was to study there in a university in the same topic you were studying before in Guatemala, and you could of course compare the two different systems. So how was that? It sounds super exciting for me. South Korea, right?
It was, yes. And to begin with, this is like a kind of an anecdote, because I discovered this great opportunity through this organization I mentioned before, Indeswa. I applied, I completed like all the steps in the process because I knew this was a full scholarship provided by Chonbuk National University in South Korea, but also there was an agreement with an organization in Guatemala. But in the end, it was the scholarship I was looking for because it covered everything that I needed to study abroad. And then the scholarship initially, the offer I received is that the program was going to be in English. So yeah, as I said before, I was accepted in the program, but once I arrived to the university in South Korea, I discovered that in the program, they didn't know that they were advertisement, the program in English abroad. So for them was also shocking to know that they had 5 students from different parts of the world, because it was not only me who was accepted in that program from abroad, but also other 4 students. And they were really surprised to know that we were there because we were having this expectation to have the program in English. Wow, that was like initially one of the surprises from both sides. So what they did was, I remember this professor, wow, the support we received from this professor, because he was the head professor of this program. And then he said, okay, don't worry, we will do our best to adapt the circumstances and to adapt the program so that both you that come from abroad and our students from South Korea receive the best support possible. So in 2 weeks, they adapted the whole program so that the five international students and the rest of students from South Korea who were part of this program started to have everything in both languages. Part of the solution was that it was going to be half in English and half in Korean. But for the international students, the challenge was, learning Korean.
Korean, of course.
So the university, in that sense, the support we received was that they gave us a second scholarship to study the language.
Wow. So you learn Korean?
I had to learn Korean. The circumstances were not the best because, as you can tell, we had this pressure and the weight on our shoulders to learn the language because we needed the language to be part of this program.
It was a bilingual career now. It was like it changed the program.
But it was also pressure for Korean students who were not expecting to study in English. They know English, but they rarely use English to communicate in academic environments. Even if their English is good, they are not like so confident to speak in English. So the challenge was both for them and for us, international students. And that's how we ended up, studying in this educational program because it was mainly designed for teachers.
Was it a master?
It was a master. That was my first master's in education. So as I told you before, the experience of learning the language was not like as enjoyable as it would be in other circumstances because you had like this pressure of like, you have to learn the language because it's part of the requirements for the program.
Sometimes I guess that push you more, maybe, right? Like if you were doing it in a context of like, oh, I'm in Korea, I will learn some words. Instead, you're there doing a full master, trying to learn language at the same time. Did you have any idea of Korean before, or was it like full from scratch?
Never. That was from scratch, and that's what made this experience more challenging, I guess. But also, as you said, it was not fully negative. On the contrary, it was a great experience because that was pushing us to the limit of, discovering that you're also able to face any kind of challenges. Despite the circumstances, we had to learn the language. I had to say that my Korean was not perfect. But I survived in this educational experience.
How long was this program?
2 years.
2 years. So you lived 2 years in Korea?
I lived 2 years in Korea.
And you had a full scholarship, so you paid nothing?
I paid nothing. The scholarship covered the tuition fee payments, also the airplane tickets, traveling from my country to South Korea and back. Yeah, and also we receive an stipend, monthly stipend to cover the costs of food, mainly during weekends, because food was provided in the dining hall, which was part of the university, during weekdays. But during weekends, we had to look for different places to eat outside the university. So we also received a stipend to cover those expenses.
So it looks like a really good experience, how you're saying it. Or I mean, I imagine they were like 2 interesting years at least to put in your CV and to put in your book of stories, right?
Exactly. And not only from the perspective of a student, because I was experiencing this firsthand, as you mentioned before, but also from the perspective of a teacher. I was able to compare, the educational system in Latin America and then the educational system in South Korea, in the Asian region.
Please tell us a little bit about that. What did you find out? A little bit of a conclusion. How can you say it very briefly, of course, because we don't have a lot of time, and I imagine this topic is super, super rich to analyze in long term. But I mean, briefly, how can you distinguish the Latin American university system and the Asian or Korean? We don't know if this is in the whole continent, but I mean, it's the example we have right now. How can you...
Wow, the educational system I would say in Asia, because after this experience of 2 years in South Korea, I learned that it's not only in Korea, but also in most of the Asian countries where the education is really demanding because they see this as the opportunity you have to succeed. So education is what you have, is what your parents can give you to succeed in life, because then you will have to compete with thousands of people in order to get a good position,
in the job market.
In the job market, yeah. So in that sense, that makes education to be really competitive, and it's really demanding. The time they expect from you to, study is not only during weekdays, but also during weekends. I remember, and this is also part of those anecdotes, is that I remember that one of the busiest days at the library in the university was Sunday. instead of being Sunday, like one of the days you devote for resting, you
Yeah.
know, and having fun, in Korea at least, is the day you devote to prepare your lessons ahead of time for next week. Because it's your responsibility to know beforehand at least a percentage of the topics that will be covered during the lessons next week. So I remember that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you had to be also, were you part of it? Did you join them on Sundays in the library as well?
Yes.
Yes.
That was really shocking for me.
For a
because,
Latin American person, that is like almost forbidden for us to
when
do
you
that.
come from Latin America, you can say that it's a bit more relaxed in
Yeah.
that sense, because it's like, okay, studies Monday to Friday, or if you study during weekends, okay, it's only that the moment you have to study. But then, yes, it's really demanding, and then you feel the pressure, and you get to this point in which you know that you have to do it because you know now you're part of that system, and then you need to cover the demands they have on you on that regard.
Is
right?
the level also higher?
Yes, it is. It is because they expect from you, as I said, that ahead of time you know most of the contents, so that you in class are able to participate in class discussions or debates. Yes, ahead of time you have to be ready to be part of those different activities. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So you put your effort also up, let's say. So not only in the language, but also in the level of the education. That's very interesting and brave. And then you went back to Guatemala.
Yes.
But then you found another scholarship, this time in the US. Is that correct? And this is a very prestigious one.
Yes. As part of this thirst for knowledge, I continue, you know, exploring other possibilities, because then I went back to Guatemala because that was part of the agreement of this full scholarship in South Korea. So I was able to, you know, share all my knowledge with not only my own students, but our other colleagues, you know. But then I continue with this desire of, okay, what's next and what else is out there to continue learning. I applied to this Fulbright scholarship. Yes, especially for teachers. The program is called Fulbright Teaching Excellence and Achievement Program, designed specifically for teachers. So I had a chance to go to the University of Arkansas in US. And that was also an intense program because we were going to get this international certification to teach English abroad. So what I love about this experience is that the experience combined not only the academic knowledge, but also the practicum. So
You were teaching as well.
Exactly. So having this experience of, you know, also teaching in a public school in US, you also hear many things about like what the context is, but it's not the same being there in front of the students and then applying everything you're learning from the university. So that practicum made experience also outstanding.
So you checked the Asian educational system, the Latin American educational system, the US or North American educational system, and then you also went to see how the Nordics educational system was. And I am interested also in seeing like what other interesting things you found in Nordic countries as another exploration you did in your long adventure of finding how education is in the world, I would say.
Through this adventure, I have to say that studying in the Nordic countries was initially my biggest dream.
Okay, why? I will stop you there. Why?
Because most of the literature I was exposed to was, you know, education in Finland, education in Sweden, education in Norway, and how the number of hours students spend in school is not necessarily an indicator of quality, because in Latin America we have this belief of like the more time you spend at school, the education is better. Whereas if you read about education in Nordic countries, it's basically the opposite, right? Because it's the countries in which students spend the less time in schools.
Yeah, there is a lot of control with the stress. No one wants to get a student stressed.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which is something in Latin America we never heard about.
Never. It's like if you're
Stress
stressed,
handling, yeah. If you're young and you're studying, I'm sorry, you will have stress.
exactly. It's like deal with it. It's part of like what being a student is, right?
And I guess in Asia as well, from what you were saying, right?
Exactly. After experiencing this in Asia, coming to Sweden, to experience the education in the Nordic region is totally the opposite, because now that I'm part of this program in international and comparative education at Stockholm University, something I really appreciate from my professors at the university is that they take care of the students. In what sense? Every time we spend 40 minutes, 45 minutes in class, they are checking the time constantly to say, okay, it's time for a break. It's break time. It's break time. And even if we're having like this debates or like incredible discussions with the peers in the classroom, they are constantly monitoring the time we devote to having breaks.
Interesting. So the time values, like it has, they have to
Exactly.
respect it.
And that is
on top of
aligned to
everything.
this Lagom, the belief of having a balanced life. Everything is important, but nothing can be more important than your well-being. And discovering that here is, wow. That really changed my perspective of how, not only how education must be experienced and lived, but also how you have to include this balance in your personal life. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how much time you devote to the academic field. If you're not feeling well, then it doesn't make sense, right?
We are now about to finish, but I would like you to say to the audience that is listening to us, how is it possible to do this? How is it possible to be confident that we can go studying abroad when it's sometimes hard or when it feels impossible to be done for economical reasons or for family reasons or whatever, right? Like I hear your story and I see a person that went all around the world looking for this inspiration that you found in this English teacher, and then when that it was done, then you found another thing to keep on studying. And I think it is super inspiring for everyone that is listening to us. And I was wondering if you can say to them, is it possible? Should they try? Or say some words maybe about this.
Of course. And in that sense, I have to say that, especially during these days, that the age of artificial intelligence and technology, information is power. Now everyone can have access to information. We have the information we need to apply to this type of programs just by clicking on the website of the universities, on the website of organizations that provide this kind of information.
And you can also get into educations.com to see different programs of different universities, compare their options, and also to get scholarships. And so I just wanted to say that, to highlight that educations.com is a platform where you can find different things, all for you that are, willing to study abroad.
Exactly. That is one of the options people have, because if you're not informed, you will always live in the world of ignorance, of, not being aware of the many possibilities that exist out there. But of course, if you don't know, it's like if those possibilities, if those opportunities do not exist, right? So that is step number one, I would say, like daring to get informed. If you want to achieve a goal, read, explore the internet, you will have like access to many different resources and information on how to apply. I always told my students that they usually wanted to achieve their goals, but they were like too lazy to start reading or getting informed about, the different ways to achieve their dreams.
It sounds scary sometimes, but don't get lazy. Go for it. At least read what it's possible to be done.
Exactly. The first step is usually the most difficult one, right? So once you have all this information, then I will advise you to apply. you know, because you're always thinking about like, what would happen if I am rejected. I think we all have the possibilities and the same chances to be rejected. But then you have to have a positive mind and think that, what if you are accepted in these programs? What if you get the scholarship? You will only know the outcome if you dare to apply and if you dare to try, right?
And you already have the no. The no is always with you. So what you can look for is the yes.
Exactly. So you will always have the possibility to apply, to compete, and then don't say you will not get the opportunity until you get this letter from the university or from the program you're applying that says, okay, sorry, you're not accepted, you're rejected or whatever. But then don't stop your possibilities beforehand, you know, always there to try.
Thank you so much, Byron, for this amazing and inspiring conversation. And just to finish this, what's next? What's your next exploration in the educational system in the world? Is there a plan?
That's a good question also for me.
He's thinking about it. Maybe next episode, in the next season, we can ask you, where are you in the world? Learning, right?
Yes. I continue learning and I continue discovering that there are so much things out there to learn. And especially, you know, that when you're a teacher, you have like this huge responsibility to keep informed about like new methodologies, new trends in education, because you have in your hands the responsibility to teach new generations.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone that is listening. See you next time in a new episode of Global Study Talks.
Thank you for listening to Global Study Talks. If you are interested in studying abroad, check out educations.com and get all the help you need in every part of your study abroad journey. See you next time.